Well, hello, and welcome to Precision TV. I am your host, Hanovi, and I hope your week is progressing well. It's almost the end. Hang in there, guys. But a world away, things are unraveling and things are getting very, very tight. Literally tight. And apparently, the Israeli forces are trying to choke, so to speak, northern Gaza, where they believe most of the Hamas militants are holed up, and they themselves, I'm sure, are probably trying to resist as best as they can. Well, today we're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about Hillary Clinton on college campuses. Well, you know that's not going to go well. We're also going to talk about the funding for the war in Israel and the funding for Ukraine. How is that going to go down in Congress, especially with a year or so left to the 2024 elections? And everybody is jockeying for power, and everybody is trying to put pressure on the other. Pretty interesting. And we have an expose in USA Today where Hunter Biden appeals the minds of Americans and describes his drug addiction, and obviously is trying to turn this around and trying to make the Republicans look like the bad guys for attacking him for him having an addiction or a problem. So I was waiting for that. It's actually a good strategy. It's not bad at all. You know what I'm saying? To appeal to the sympathies of the American public and said, look, I'm just like anybody else. I got a problem, and why should people be attacking me for a problem? It's funny how there was a time that we remember, the whole crack era, where hardly any sympathy was shown to people who were in very similar situations. But hey, what can I say? After all, he needs sympathy. But all the black folks in the inner city who did extravagant jail sentences, for a little bit of crack, they didn't need sympathy. I mean, who are these people? Why do they need sympathy? But Hunter Biden, he needs sympathy. And all the young black men and women who never owned a plane, who never were able to bring in one load of cocaine into America, but they got some stiff, severe sentences, 30, 40 years. Compliments of who? Joe Biden, of course. The 1994 crime bill, where they needed to, let's not forget, according to Hillary, where they need to get rid of these super predators of the street. Super predators. Instead of super freaks, they needed to get rid of super predators from off the streets. So Hillary, Joe Biden, and the guy who you guys say, he's a black man. We love Bill Clinton. He's a black man. He's just like us. He's a black man. They had a very good plan to put you guys away for a very, very long time. Coincidentally, while a lot of your peeps are serving 30 and 40-year sentences, guess who came and did criminal justice reform and gave them a second chance? Guess who did it? Is it Obama? No. Is it Hillary Clinton? Oh, no. No. It was Donald Trump. Donald Trump said, no. You guys are crazy. These guys were doing 30, 40 years. Okay? And you charge them under the what? The RICO Act. Criminal enterprise. And funny enough, That's to show you the power of this system and how deadly and brutal and vicious that these principalities and powers can be. That's why you're always reminded that your fight is not against flesh and blood, but your fight is against principalities and powers. Principalities and powers. And imagine he saved and gave a second chance to young black men and women. Well, they weren't young anymore because they were already serving 20, 15 years of their sentence or whatever. They said, look, I'm not going to let you rot and die in jail. I'm going to do criminal justice reform because it's an abomination to what is being done to blacks on the soils of America. And we're so much about democracy. Oh, we're a democracy. Oh. So he says, no. So he does that. He says, if you guys were serving 30, 40 years and charging all these RICO laws and, I'm going to give you a second chance. And he did that. Anyway, let's get back to what's going on in the Middle East. And we know what's going on. It's a critical time now. I'm telling you. There's no if or maybe or whether or not this is going to unravel or not. It is beyond the stage of being saved. Okay? It is beyond the stage of being saved. We understand the strategy that Israel is using. Obviously, they're trying to starve and choke out Hamas, so to speak. So there's no... So you got to understand the strategy here, guys, okay? Pay attention, okay? Obviously, the mainstream media has already put their cards on the table. And we know what they're doing and we know what they're saying. They're saying, pretty much, there's no distinction. There's hardly a Western media that is saying there's a distinction between Hamas and Palestinians. As far as they're concerned, they're one and the same. Don't ask me. I don't know. They probably know something I don't know. But anyway, that's pretty much their stance. So all this blockade, it's not just to punish the whole of Gaza. It's also strategic, militarily strategic, to choke out Hamas, so to speak, to ensure that they don't get no food and water and they don't get no ammunition and no resupply. It's not a bad strategy. But obviously, I would think strategically, there was some point in time that the same Hamas would have thought, you know what? There will come a day where we would have to have some sort of open confrontation with Israel. So I would believe that they would have had at least some sort of stockpile to fight an extended campaign for probably at least 6 months in terms of food and water and supplies. So I don't see this ending in a week or 2 or a month, but I understand the strategy. They waited and waited and waited, and that's part of the grand strategy. Because they know, obviously, or they believe that if they were to allow supplies to come in to the civilian population, a lot of that supplies might end up in Hamas's hands. That's what they believe. So that was the overall grand strategy. Weaken them, tire them out, deny them food and water and stuff like that. But as I said, obviously, I would believe that they probably would have prepared for at least a 6-month supply of food and water. So let's see how that strategy works out. And while it's good strategy to surround and, try to prevent anything from getting in or getting out, at the same time, I would believe that these people know these areas. And if they wanted to resupply, Especially you have a situation where what neighbors are now becoming hostile towards Israel. It seems like Hamas is winning the quote unquote propaganda war in the media, as they would say. That's how they term it. It's their term, propaganda war. So obviously the world is upset. Obviously, you see what's happening, the protests all over the place. So they're winning on that front in some respects. And as I said, they have hostile neighbors now to Israel. I believe that if they really wanted to resupply or get stuff to them in this modern world with technology and and all kind of things happening all over the place, they would find a way to do it. Because it's not very easy to completely seal off and surround, especially while you're probably taking income in. Okay? So that's the overall strategy. But let's get to the fundamentals of what Sun Tzu says. Hey, he's the guy I refer to. We talked about Sun Tzu, huh? So what Sun Tzu says about soldiers or fighting men when you put them on dead ground? And obviously, it seems like right now, Hamas is on dead ground. There's no way out. Most of them are probably thinking, we're not going to make this out. There's no end in sight, and we're probably not going to make this out alive. So Sun Tzu says that when you put troops on dead ground, you will bring out a level of fighting spirit in them never seen before. That they will be so motivated because they know this is the last stand. So, of course, all the military planners and, analysts in Israel has said this is going to be a long and bloody campaign. Because Sun Tzu says when men are in dead ground, fighting men are in dead ground, they will move mountains. So be prepared. And also there's a fact that I don't believe that this is what the media says. They say, oh, Hamas is a proxy of Iran. And Hezbollah and all these guys are intertwined. So just imagine, if that is the case, just imagine they've invested so much resources, time, and money into that force in Gaza. I don't believe that they are going to sit by idly and allow that force to be entirely destroyed as Israel has as their agenda. They will find some way to disrupt the operation that Israel is trying to put in effect in Gaza. So that's coming. That's obvious. I mean, that's like a logical consequence. Let's also think about something. Again, let's go back to, there's also something called the 36 stratagems of war. One of them says that you besiege way to free Zao. So basically, when you're being attacked, you or your allies will attack something that is dear to you, that you will have to remove yourself from the current attack to go protect those resources. And it's obvious. Well, I'm sure also that the IDF would have considered those things. And that is why, and the US would have also considered those things. That is why you see there's additional resources from the United States to be used as some sort of deterrent in case that people would get ideas, or friends of Hamas would get ideas to get involved. But again, remember, the siege way to free Zao. And it's based on an old battle that took place in the Warring States period in China. Because as much as you guys may think that China was always a wonderfully united, nation, one big united nation, absolutely not. The history of China is drenched in war and blood Okay? There were 7 different states, and they were fighting for power until Emperor Qin triumphed over these states and created one united China. So again, as I tell you, there isn't a nation on this earth that is born out of peace. Every nation in this world is born out of brutal war. And I always liken it, as I've said previously, to the birth of a nation, to the birth of a child. Notice that child comes into the world screaming and violent. Rupture to get into the world. It's the same with a nation. But anyway, that's a little side note. So it's quite possible, as already we're seeing, Hezbollah in the north making attempts to, fire on Israel, or Israel's northern border. We've seen that happen as recently. Recently that happened. Very recently, and apparently they were able to pierce through the Iron Dome protection system. Right? They were able to do that. So obviously they found ways to do that, and a lot of people would have learned a lot of things. From the Ukraine-Russia war. I mean, that gave a lot of people a lot of ideas, and they saw what worked and what didn't work, and now they're implementing it in their own wars. So that's coming. Apparently, there's some sort of speech that has to be given tomorrow by the leader of Hezbollah, and we got to see how that turns out. Might be a call to arms. Who knows? But a lot of people are keeping their eyes on that speech tomorrow. Again, it's very likely that, as the mainstream media has said, all the people that support Hamas would not want to see all their investments and all their resources, quote unquote, go down the drain. So I think they probably will do everything in their power to sort of trip Israel's operation up in Gaza right now. Strategically, most of that makes a lot of sense. Let's see how it turns out. More than likely, I believe, as much as the United States will try to stay out of this conflict, I believe somewhere or the other, in some form, it's just inevitable that the United States will be drawn into this conflict. And then all hell will break loose. Because if it comes to a situation where the United States, that's why you see that there've been, limited responses based on, what is happening, and, proxies are firing on US troops and stuff like that. There've been limited responses because I think once you pass that stage of no return and there's like a confrontation with another state or another actor in the Middle East and an all-out full-blown war, then that would obviously involve other major powers, and there will be no turning back. So that is why the United States and everybody is trying, there's so much diplomatic effort, is trying to temper what's going on. And then we have the element of there's hardly any way right now or anything to be said to Israel to try to temper their actions. Because, of course, we know what happened. And there's also the political survivability of Bibi. His career, his political career, his hold on power is on the line. So he will do everything within his power to, quote unquote, redeem himself from the failures that took place on October 7th. So there's no way anybody's going to tie his hands. And that is the problem. That's also a problem. It's a very dangerous situation. No way anybody's going to tie his hands. So let's get to some more fun stuff. Hillary's at it again. She went to a college campus having a little discussion. Somebody interrupts a discussion. She shut him down. Totally cancel him. Say, oh, no. You can't interrupt. Don't worry. Wait. Don't worry. Wait for me. After I'm finished speaking, we'll talk about it later. And imagine, she was the quintessential, voice on campus. She was a revolutionary on campus. And now, a few years later, well, not just a few, lots of few years later, she is shutting down people from interrupting her when she's speaking or asking. And the guy was relatively polite. I'm sure all you guys saw the clip. He was relatively polite. And he was asking some questions, and it was related also to what's going on in Israel. And he's like, hey, do you think, we should have a ceasefire? And everybody's calling for a ceasefire, Then there was another situation where Biden was giving a speech, and a woman who claimed she was a rabbi stood up and said, no. We need to stop this. And that's the funny thing with the mainstream media. Anytime somebody who is not for the war or wants a ceasefire, all of a sudden that is equated with you're anti-Israel, or you're pro-Hamas, or you're pro-Palestinian. But do these warmongering hawks on the media ever thought for 1 second that there may just be people who just want peace, who are interested in seeing peace in the Middle East, who are neither for Hamas, neither for Palestinians, neither for Israel, but they want a peaceable solution? No, if you want a peaceable solution, you're pro-Hamas, you're pro-Palestinian, because in some respects they feel that Israel has the advantage, the military advantage. So, no, you can't stop them now. If you stop them now and you're calling for peace and ceasefire, guess what? No, you're pro-Hamas, you're pro-Palestinian. Funny enough, there's so much Jewish people themselves right here in the United States who don't want war. Nobody's calling them pro-Hamas. Nobody's calling them pro-Palestinian. But if anybody else says that, all of a sudden, you're pro-Hamas, you're pro-Palestinian. And all these people that went into the Capitol and sit in and said, look, we need a ceasefire. We need peace. Not in our name. They're not calling them pro-Hamas. But they're Jewish people and they want peace too. I saw a lady who came on television. She had one of the hostages, her family, which is so tragic, is still being held hostage. And she said, look, I don't care whatever it takes. Please, free them. Do what it takes. If we need a prisoner swap, prisoner exchange. And she was adamant that, hey, look, we need a two-state solution. But there are people who is hell-bent on seeing a total all-out war and unraveling of the Middle East. That is part of their agenda. And you're like, wait, well, how could that be? Yes, there are people who want that. I mean, this is not surprising. You and I, we know people personally, people in our lives, sometimes it's friends, family, acquaintances who are hell-bent on war, who like disruption, never want peace. You think nations or you think corporate people are any different? No, they're not. So this is not surprising. Well, let's get to, Hunter Biden, he had a big expose on USA Today, and he says, look, I'm just a regular old guy, I have a problem. I have a drug addiction, and I don't see why people should, be taking advantage of my situation and coming after me so hard. Well, I know he knows why they're doing it. It's called politics, buddy. It's called politics. By any means necessary. There's hardly any morality in politics. And everybody's fighting for power. And these people are fighting for power. Some of the most dangerous, devious, conniving people on the planet. They don't maintain power or they don't acquire power by being sweet and loving and nice. So we know why they're going after him, but we also know why that he benefits, and in some respects, he's treated a little differently. And that's okay. He's expected to be treated a little differently. After all, he's the president's son. But I think the strategy is good. I think the strategy is good, to appeal to some sort of sympathy from the American people. They say, oh, look at these Republicans. They're so evil. They're so mean. I have a problem. I have a disease. I have a sickness that I'm dealing with. And why are they coming after me? But again, as I said earlier, who cared and who showed sympathy to the thousands of young black men and women who were on crack in the 80s? Remember? What was the slogan? Nancy Reagan and all these uppity white folks. What were they saying? Just say no. It's easy. Just say no. Just say no. I guess, hey, that is probably advice that we should give to all these other people. Just say no. And on top of it, when they couldn't say no and they got into problems, you jail the heck out of them. Give them some of the most extraordinary sentences. Destroyed their lives. Destroyed their family lives. The men and women who got 30, 40 years sentences that were never wrong to see their kids grow up. Were never wrong to enjoy a family life. And you're saying, oh, all they had to say, just say no. Just say no. Well, I'm sure black folks would probably be more than happy to return the favor and then tell you and tell everybody else, just say no. And on that note, I'm going to leave it for tonight. I hope you guys are having a great week, as I said. Don't worry. What do you say? TGIF. It's Friday tomorrow. Let's party. Stay woke, as they say. And I'm not talking about woke, as they talk about woke. But keep your eyes open. Use your ears. And listen. And use your intellect. More than your emotion. So that you can analyze. You can observe and analyze situations and come to a reasonable solution. And you would not be bamboozled or taken for a ride or beguiled by some of the most dangerous people in this world whose ultimate aim is to do that to you. Have a good night. Enjoy. This is Passation TV coming at you. Good night.